Ash fell like gray snow on the broken steps of the Athenaeum, piling silently against pillars cracked by heat and time. Ariadne brushed a drift from the sill before she closed the bronze shutters, sealing out the rasp of the wind. She paused, letting her fingers rest on the warm metal. There was always heat now, radiating from the poisoned sky even after sunset, and listened for distant engines. Nothing yet. The different warlords all tuned their scavenged motors differently, and she had learned to tell them apart from miles away. Tonight, the horizon was quiet, but quiet never lasted. She turned back to the reading room. Once it had been so labyrinthine that new patrons were issued a linen map at the door, but half the stacks had collapsed in the fire season of Year 3. Across the remaining high aisles lay a patchwork of tarps to catch the ceaseless leaks from fractured pipes overhead, and crude braces hammered from road signs propped up sagging balconies. Candles, real paraffin candles, filched from a ruined cathedral, burned in clusters where electric sconces had long since died. Their small flames cast the spines of surviving volumes in tones of honey and blood. In the silence, she could almost hear the voices trapped in those pages, the rise and fall of meter in ancient epics, the crisp logic of forgotten mathematicians, the laughter of children immortalized in dog-eared picture books. They had been her companions since she barricaded herself inside 8 years ago, dragging crashed shelves into choke points, wiring the outer staircases with scavenged explosives, rigging a cuneiform tablet as the dead man switch in case anyone reached the rotunda. The irony pleased her. If she died pressing the stylus through that baked clay, the last artifact of civilization would shatter itself to keep its secrets. Ariadne made her nightly rounds with a battered notebook. She logged temperature, humidity, the status of each hallway, any new cracks spidering across marble. Stacks PN through PR remained stable. The classics alcove continued sinking by a centimeter a month. The children's gallery smelled of mildew, but the spore count was holding. She ticked boxes by moon-slim candlelight, throat closing whenever she found a shelf empty. Books did not simply vanish. Rats and rot were thorough, but not stealthy. Theft meant infiltrators, scouts for one warlord or another, and scouts meant the armories would soon follow. She ended in the map vault, far below ground. Steel doors sagged on scorched hinges, but the biometric locks were long dead, and she had replaced them with an ingenious, if brutal, solution. A 2-line haiku, written in acid ink across the access panel that dissolved any glove refusing to carry her own body's oils. An old archival joke. She slid her palm across the poem. The panel warmed. Gears clicked. The door sighed. Inside, the vault smelled of dust baked to sweetness, like old incense. She took down a rolled parchment from a climate cabinet. The hydrocycle of the inland seas. It was a treatise printed a century before the oceans turned to poison. It described a method for distilling potable water from ambient humidity using nothing more complex than sunlight and copper mesh, technology any warlord could weaponize into dominion. She had spent nights debating whether to destroy it. She had decided instead to memorize every line. If the ink faded or the parchment burned, the method would live in her bones, available only to those she judged worthy. The parchment fluttered, delicate as moth wings, when a distant thump shivered the floor. Not thunder. Thunder in this age carried a metallic tang and a sizzling crackle. This was an engine backfiring, close, nearer than she'd predicted. She slid the scroll home and sealed the vault. On the roof, the night sky glowed bruise purple. Southward, far across the ashen plain, lights bobbed like embers. Magnifying lenses revealed a convoy, 6 bikes, 2 armored rigs and a truck carrying floodlights. The riders wore chain scrap and carapace plates, hammered from old road signs, symbols of the Chrome King. Ariadne's heart beat a dry, arrhythmic rhythm. The Chrome King's warband had raided a monastic server farm last winter. Legend said they hauled away glass drives, still blinking with decades of solar research, then melted the monks into slag to silence them forever. If he wanted the Athenaeum, he wanted more than stories for children. She descended, severing emergency fuses behind her. Her traps were primitive. Battery acid and glass bulbs, shards of philosophy texts packed into claymore frames, but lethal. She regretted their necessity, even as she armed them. At dawn, engines idled outside the main portico. A skull-blazoned loudhailer crackled. Caretaker of books, come forth. You hold words hours by conquest. The voice was female, surprisingly young. Ariadne peered from a slit in the barricade. A girl in chromium pauldrons stood atop a rig, balancing the loudhailer and a burnished spear. Others fanned out, rifles ready. Yet they did not rush the stairs. Perhaps they knew the reputation of librarians, how they preferred poisons over powder. Ariadne unlatched the iron wicket and stepped onto the blasted plaza. She wore her robe of stitched title pages, each square a lost text. At her belt hung a narrow blade, formal, ceremonial, and a brass whistle. Beyond her barricades, the plain radiated midday heat. The riders shimmered like silverfish above tar. "I am Ariadne," she said, voice cracked by disuse. "What you seek lies inside. If you seek to plunder, you destroy yourselves as surely as you destroy me." The Chrome girl lowered her spear. "I am Lice of the Third Circuit, herald to the Chrome King. He covets knowledge of irrigation. Our foragers say you guard such scrolls." "I guard worlds," Ariadne corrected. "What price do you offer?" "Not coin. I need nothing." "Your life," Lice said without malice, only fact, "and mercy for your fortress. If you refuse, we tear the walls stone from stone. We have plasma torches. Your traps burn once." She leaned closer, eyes bright, almost hungry. "But if you give us what we ask, you walk away. Books are dust to most. The king keeps trophies, not librarians." Dust. Ariadne thought of the map vault's breathing filters, the endless battle against mold spores. She studied the girl's face. 17, maybe 18, hardened by sun and motor fumes, but still so young that the curve of her jawline held childhood softness. Ariadne had been that age when the wars began, when she first volunteered as an apprentice cataloger, believing stories were stronger than missiles. "The knowledge you want," she said slowly, "could feed thousands or arm 10,000. How will your king choose?" Lice hesitated. "He will choose survival, and we are his people." "He will choose power," Ariadne murmured. "Your king could share aquifers, build gardens. Will he?" She gave no time for answer. "Return at dusk. I must consult the index. 1 scroll, no more. Bring only yourself. If anyone else sets foot on the steps, I ignite the archives." Lice tilted her head, assessing. "A wise bluff." Ariadne met her gaze. "Not bluff, child. I'm the last librarian. I'm made of books now. Burn me. Words burn with me." She turned, robe rustling, and vanished behind the gates. Back inside, she moved swiftly. She considered incineration. Torch the hydrocycle treatise before nightfall. Bury its secret. But she recalled a mantra from a scholar long dead. Give nothing to tyranny, but refuse no mind a chance to open. Maybe Lice could become more than a weapon of the king. Ariadne resolved to gamble. She spent the afternoon preparing. First, she duplicated the hydrocycle method onto rice-thin vellum, altering one critical ratio: the surface area of copper lattice. Done correctly, the device produced clean water. Done with her altered numbers, it produced water laced with heavy metals that stunted crops. Reversible, if one knew the missing constant. She sealed the forgery in a brass tube. Next, she opened a forgotten crawl space where the children's gallery sagged. There she found what she sought, a slim picture book titled The Cloud Shepherd. Its pages were bright with pop-up illustrations, a rabbit tending sky gardens, a windmill spinning clouds into rain. Ridiculous innocence, but within hid the true equations, encoded in the spacing of raindrops across drawings, an old librarian cipher. She tucked the book into her sleeve. As dusk bled red across the plaza, Ariadne unlocked the wicket. Lise approached alone, spear grounded, eyes wary. Behind her, the convoy waited at safe distance, engines purring. "Do you bring the scroll?" Lise asked. "I do," Ariadne said, holding the brass tube. "And a test." She stepped aside, gesturing inside. "Knowledge must be accepted with understanding. Enter." The girl hesitated, then followed. They crossed the entry hall, its once grand mosaic seared by scorch marks. Inside, the air cooled. Candlelight limned endless shelves. Lisa's composure cracked. "So many," she whispered. "Fewer than yesterday, more than tomorrow," Ariadne answered. She led her to a reading niche lit by a single lamp. There she produced the picture book, opening it so the rabbit popped out over a paper hill. Lise blinked. "Your king wants irrigation," Ariadne said. "He expects diagrams. Instead, I will give you a story." Lisa's hand tightened on the spear. "We had an agreement." "You and I are not our warlords," Ariadne said gently. "Sit. Listen." Something in her tone, or perhaps the weight of bound centuries around them, compelled obedience. Lise sank onto a low stool. Ariadne read. The tale was short. The cloud shepherd climbs sky ladders, coaxes rain to thirsty valleys, shares water freely. Each page's rhythm carried hidden numerics. As Ariadne turned them, her finger traced margins, tapping patterns against the wood. She watched Lise's eyes follow. The girl's lips moved, forming numbers even before she understood she was doing so. When the story ended, Lise hovered in silence. "It's for children, yet I feel as if I learned something I can't name." She shook her head, almost angrily. "We have no time for riddles. Show me the scroll." Ariadne handed her the brass tube. "Your test is simple. Compare what I told you with what you hold. Which do you trust?" Lise undid the cap and unrolled the parchment. By lamp glow, she scanned columns of figures, neat diagrams of capture domes and condensation channels. Her brow furrowed. "I'm no engineer." "No, but you are a mind, unfettered. Think of the story's numbers. The cloud shepherd's windmill blades, how many? The raindrops in the garden, how far apart?" Ariadne watched recognition kindle. There are two answers in your head now. One leads to life, one to ruin. The girl swallowed. "Why test me?" "Because books are a covenant. They ask only that we think before we act." Ariadne took a breath. "What will you tell your king?" Lise stared at parchment, then at Pop-Up Rabbit. Outside, engines idled, waiting for conquest. At last she said, voice ragged, "If I give him this, people will sicken. He'll blame you, not the math. He'll burn the rest for vengeance. Then don't give it to him. He'll kill me." "Maybe," Ariadne conceded. "Or maybe you'll become something larger than his fear. Knowledge can turn tyrants to dust if enough hearts refuse them. That is the second test." Liz touched the bunny on the page. Delicate gesture. "Will you come with me?" she asked. "Help me stand against him?" "I cannot leave," Ariadne said quietly. "The stacks need their keeper. But I can give you more stories. and a place to return when you are ready. Lise exhaled, as though surrendering a weight she had carried too long. She rolled the fake scroll, slid it back into the tube, and snapped it shut. Then she tucked the Cloud Shepherd inside her cuirass, close to skin. "I was told librarians were ghosts," she said, "but you're more dangerous than any warlord." "Stories are the sharpest blades," Ariadne smiled. "Go, while darkness hides you." They returned to the gate. Distant engines flared. Impatience grew. Lise turned, 1 foot outside. "What if they come for blood when I resist?" "Send them parables," Ariadne replied, "and if they breach the door, I will choose fire." Lise nodded once, then strode into the night. Ariadne sealed the wicket, listening as the convoy roared, argument rising, then engines revving away, not toward the Athenaeum, but westward, chasing their vanishing herald. She allowed herself one trembling breath of relief. Days passed. No riders. In the deep hush, Ariadne mended bindings, replastered cracks, read aloud to dust motes. Yet her thoughts drifted often to the girl on the desert road, carrying a children's tale sharper than any spear. On the 7th dawn, a different noise echoed down the boulevard, the slap of bare feet, ragged breathing. Ariadne peered out. A boy, maybe 12, stumbled across sun-baked flagstones, clutching a sack. When he saw the barred gate, he dropped to knees. "Please," he croaked. "They said the librarian would trade water for words." She unbolted the wicket, slid through, and offered a flask. He gulped, gasped, drank again. Only then did she ask, "Who sent you?" "A girl with silver shoulders," he said between swallows. "She freed us from the chrome pits, gave each of us a page, told us to bring them here. She said they'd be safer with the last librarian." He opened the sack. Dozens of leaves fluttered out, pages torn, smoke-singed, coated with equations. The missing drives of the monastic server farm, printed on paper before their destruction. Ariadne's chest tightened. Lise had stolen them from under her king's nose, smuggled them out on the backs of children, a rebellion carried by paper. She led the boy inside, bound his wounds, fed him broth. As he slept beneath an oak desk, Ariadne gathered the pages. They were fragile but intact, their margins annotated in a neat hand. Lyses, decoding formulae for solar concentrators, fungal protein vats, vertical gardens. Solutions to rebuild a world. Ariadne worked through the night, indexing, cataloging. When she finished, she placed the sheaf in the central cabinet, alongside the hydrocycle scroll, true version, and the Cloud Shepherd, whose pop-up rabbit now wore a tiny slate pendant carved with the symbol of open water, a child's edition, perhaps Lisa's. She sealed the cabinet with a new poem of protection. Ink remembers, fire forgets, but hearts that carry pages outlive the sun. 2 moons later, rumors drifted in on pilgrim winds. The Chrome King's convoy had fractured. Some pledged to a Chrome Queen who spoke of wells and seeds. In villages once loyal to steel and fear, people now bartered stories for grain. A small, silver-shouldered figure traveled among them, reading from a pop-up book that made hardened raiders weep. Ariadne heard and smiled, yet danger never slept. North of the Athenaeum, the pale cabal, part priesthood, part abattoir, consolidated territory. Their augurs believed written words housed demons. They vowed to purge all text, scroll, or skin before marching south. Scouts approached in silent daylight, wearing robes the color of old bone, dragging carts of quicklime to turn libraries into slag. The librarian counted 20 in the first cadre. More would follow. She considered detonating her fail-safes now, letting knowledge join the stars. But she remembered Lisa's choice, the children's sackburst of pages, the whisper of rebellion. Instead, she lit lanterns in every window, beacons of welcome. Then she opened the main gates wide and waited among the stacks, robe of title pages rippling like wings. When the bone-robed augurs stepped inside, torches hissing, she greeted them not with blade or fire, but with words. "Come, travelers, I offer a story." They hesitated. Fire fears water. Zealots fear questions. Ariadne felt the library breathe around her, millions of hearts pressed between boards, awaiting their chance to speak. She lifted a thin volume, a dialogue of ethics disguised as a folk tale, and began to read. Her voice rose, steady as dawn through dust, carrying across marble and ruin. The augurs stood transfixed, torches guttering, as language seeded cracks in their certainty. Outside, dawn approached, the sky bruised yet brightening. In that fragile light, the last librarian on a scorched planet kept turning pages, weaving spells not of sorcery, but of possibility, holding the line between oblivion and the slender hope that stories, once planted, would bloom even in ash. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a queen with chrome pauldrons kneeled beside a newborn cistern, cupped clear water, and remembered the rabbit who shepherded clouds.